What are we discussing on today's podcast, you ask? Well, I got to discuss my growing impatience with Mike Hazen and Torey Lovullo after the D-backs lose another game in series as they continue to fall and just spiral down the standings. So I got to let off some steam on today's podcast. And then part two with Javier Reyes of Lockdown Padres, drafting the best trade deadline deals that will have the biggest impact for the rest of the season, all on today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast.
You are Locked on Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day listening to. Always charismatic host of this podcast, Millard Thomas. I'm a multimedia journalist and I'm a graphic designer, so please go check out my website, millardthomas24.myportfolio.com. On there you can see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. If you want to see more content by me, just follow me on Twitter at CreatorThomas24 for my personal account, or just look up Locked on Diamondbacks about Twitter, Instagram for the podcast handle. And of course, thank you for making Locked on Diamondbacks, your first listen every day. Would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free and available on all platforms, so please continue to tell your friends. One of those platforms is YouTube, so please subscribe to the Locked on Diamondbacks YouTube channel. If you go to the YouTube channel right now, you can actually see Quetzal Marte is joining today's video stream, the bobblehead, not the player, of course. So go hit subscribe on the Locked on Diamondbacks YouTube channel. And for the people who are watching the YouTube video, this will be the only part of the podcast you see. I got the full draft on the YouTube video. For the audio audience, you will hear part two with Javier Reyes of Locked on Padres, but the video audience will have to go to YouTube to catch the full draft. But now let's talk a little bit about this series against the Giants and just my growing impatience with this D-backs front office and coaching staff, because the D-backs lost to the San Francisco Giants in the series finale. They lost 3 out of the 4 games to the Giants. And like we said, entering the series, the D-backs are entering the toughest stretch run of the season. A lot of NL West opponents, a lot of NL wildcard opponents you got to face. And the D-backs need all these wins. The D-backs need every game they could get. And they just look lifeless against the San Francisco Giants team. And I just do not like the comments I'm hearing from Mike Hazen and Torey Lovullo right now. The D-backs got shut out in that finale against the Giants. And if you remember, the D-backs didn't get their first shutout of the season until July 6th against the New York Mets. So since July, they've been shut out 3 times. This finale against the Giants, once against the Mariners, and now against the New York Mets as well. The D-backs offense has not been at all good the last 3 games, because the pitching was quietly really good in this series. In that finale, we saw an incredible Brandon Pfaadt performance, because Pfaadt, we know what his issues have been this season. He's been a guy that's given up a lot of hard contact, specifically home runs. I think I would have to look this up, but in terms of home run rate allowed, Brandon Pfaadt might be the worst in baseball. Gave up another solo shot in the finale against the Giants, but that's all the damage he allowed. 1 earned run with a solo shot, 7 innings, 7 strikeouts. Like, Brandon Pfaadt looked like the guy that we could trust, but unfortunately, the offense was not able to bail him out. And it wasn't just the finale, because the D-backs in their last 3 games were 1 for 7 with runners in scoring position. They only came through 1 time with their opportunity, and they only had 7 opportunities total in their last 3 games, and 5 of them came in the finale, because in game 2 they had no runners in scoring position, and in game 3 they only had 2 opportunities and they came through 1 time. 0 for 5 in the finale. A guy like Corbin Carroll, you look at his numbers post All-Star break, he's got like around a 200 average and around a 700 OPS. Like, it's been really bad for him recently. And this offense, like, at times it feels like the offense is the issue. At times it feels like the pitching is the issue. And in this series, you could definitely blame the offense, because the pitching was really solid. A Slade Chichini, I don't even know how to pronounce his last name just yet, but he was solid in his debut. Was it the perfect debut? No, but pitching to the 5th, 2 earned runs. Torey Lovullo was a little scared that 3rd time through the lineup for a rookie. I get it, but The pitching was fine this series. The bullpen overall was fine. Miguel Castro gave up an earned run. Tyler Gilbert gave up a couple earned runs in game 3. But overall, the pitching was really good. You never gave up more than 4 earned runs at any point this series. And the D-backs offense was never able to capitalize in any of these games. And as it currently stands, my patience is wearing thin with this D-backs team because the D-backs are now just 4 games above 500, if you could believe that. At one point, I thought the D-backs are going to cruise to 20 games above 500. They're just like the D-backs might end this season as a below 500 team. Like if they continue the pace that they're on post All-Star break like this, somehow this D-backs team might only win like 78 games and may only be a 4-game improvement from last season. Like entering the year, I said the D-backs need at least 80 wins for this season to be a success. But once the All-Star break rolled around and the D-backs were tied for the division lead, like I was like, all right, we got to change our expectations a little bit. I don't need this team to win the World Series, but they better be a playoff team. I don't even need them to win the division, but they better be like a 89 win wild card team, right? Between 87 and like 90, 91 wins and make the wild card at least. And as it currently stands, the D-backs on the outside looking in, and are you going to bet on this team to make the postseason as it currently stands with what you've seen the last 2 months over the Giants, the Reds, the Cubs, the Brewers? Like the Brewers are, I think the Cubs are still behind the D-backs, but the Cubs are like one of the hottest teams in baseball. The Miami Marlins, like those teams made additions at the deadline. A lot of those teams are playing good baseball right now, and the D-backs are just not. And I'm looking at the D-backs leadership, the Torey Lovullos, the Mike Hazens of the world, and I'm just not feeling good right now. My patience is wearing thin with both of those guys. I don't like what Torey is saying when he's like, I don't know what else to do with these guys. Like, I don't want them to take it too serious. I want to keep it simple, but I'm also saying don't try. Like, what are you saying, Torey Lovullo? I'm not quite sure what the message is you're saying. I'm not sure the message you're communicating to your players is really getting through. I'm Mike Hazen. I'm not entirely in love with his job over his tenure with the Arizona Diamondbacks. It's not like Mike Hazen has been the perfect GM either, right? Like, why is he trading for a Jace Peterson? Of course, he didn't give anything up for a Jace Peterson. Might just be an injury replacement, but you got a ton of dudes in your minor leagues with the Buddy Kennedys and the Blaze Alexanders and so many dudes that you could just call up right now. So many young guys that you could at least call up and give them some opportunities. But instead, you're going to trade for a guy with a couple years of control that you might have to throw out there and keep on your active roster. Like, what are you doing if you're either one of those guys in leaderships? And I've been someone that's been critical of Torey Lovullo when it comes to those in-game situations, the moments of the game, when to leave someone in, when to pull someone at the right time, the way he constructs his lineups. Like, I don't really love Mike Hazen or Torey Lovullo. When it comes to how they view the game of baseball, I'm not entirely sure I agree with them. Now, I think the other question is, are these guys getting empowered by ownership and the guys ahead of them, or the guys above them, I should say? Because you can say when you look at the D-backs franchise history, like the last 3 times the D-backs have made the postseason, you look at their last 3 playoff appearances, the next season, they always drop to around an 80-win team, between like 80 and 85 wins. Then the season after that, they're either another 80-win team or they're 70 wins and below that. Then that 4th season, they're always like a top 5 worst team in Major League Baseball. So anytime they've been on the precipice of building a true playoff contender, or when they have built playoff contenders, teams that have made it to the postseason, the very next year and over the ensuing years, they kind of just deconstruct whatever they were building, and then they end up back in the basement. And maybe we're seeing this cyclical cycle again with the D-backs, where maybe they will still get it together in time and make the postseason, but then can you trust this team to improve in the offseason and come back next season as a better team? It's hard for me to believe that. It's hard for me to really have any credence or trust in this D-backs front office and managerial staff as it currently stands. And I want to see this team improve and get better and make it to the postseason. But I don't know if the guys we're looking up to right now in leadership are the guys to get this team back on track. I don't feel that commanding presence from the Lovullos and the Mike Hazens of the world. Like, if you love Torey Lovullo, then why do you only give him these 1-year contracts? Like, that doesn't inspire a lot of confidence in the fans' trust in Torey Lovullo or belief that the front office truly trusts Torey Lovullo if they're just signing these one-year deals. And Mike Hazen, do I trust him as a team builder? Like, I've seen him pull off some really good trades. The Eduardo Escobar deal was great. Love the Dalton Varsho deal. I think that was strong. JD Martinez deal was strong as well. But then what happens after those deals? The JD Martinez of the world walk in free agency. Eduardo Escobar, he has a couple good seasons with Arizona. Then he gets flipped for absolutely nothing at a deadline. And then we'll see what happens with the Dalton Varsho trade. Gurriel's going to be probably leaving in the offseason, and Gabriel Moreno's currently hurt. So it's like, I don't really have a lot of trust or faith in either one of those guys. Dbacks are spiraling. Dbacks are falling out the standings. And do I have trust in the Mike Hazens and the Torey Lovullos of the world to get us back on track and course correct? Unfortunately, I do not.